Fiancé says she wants a no-kids wedding, so I'm not allowed to bring my daughter. But when I get to the venue, I see both of her kids and her nieces all dressed up. And at that moment, I laugh in her face and tell her this. I proposed to my fiancé 6 months ago after dating for about a year. Things were going well, you know? We both had kids from previous relationships, and I thought it was time to blend our families properly. Like, I was genuinely excited about it. I'd been single for 3 years after my divorce, focused entirely on being a good dad to Lucy. And then I met someone who seemed to understand that my daughter came first. At least, that's what I thought. She wanted a big wedding. I'm talking $15,000 for 80 guests. Open bar, live band, the whole thing. I work in IT, making decent money, but I've got child support and a mortgage. Plus, Lucy's involved in gymnastics, which isn't cheap, and she needed braces soon. I told my fiancé we needed to be realistic, especially since we had 3 kids between us to think about. My daughter Lucy was 7. Her daughters, Kaylee and Bella, were 9 and 11. Between groceries, activities, and everything else, money was tight. I remember sitting at her kitchen table going over the numbers. She had this wedding binder, right? Like 3 inches thick with magazine cutouts and fabric samples and all this stuff. She kept showing me pictures of centerpieces that cost $200 each, and I'm doing math in my head thinking about how that's Lucy's gymnastics for 2 months. But I didn't want to be the cheapskate fiancé, you know? So I tried to be supportive while also being realistic. We compromised on $8,000, split 50-50. I thought that was fair. She wasn't happy about it, I could tell. She got real quiet and started flipping through her binder real aggressively, making these little sighs. But eventually she said, okay, we'll make it work. We scaled back the guest list, picked a cheaper venue, went with a DJ instead of a live band. All stuff that made sense. Then about 3 months before the wedding, we're sitting on her couch watching TV, and she just casually brings up this no kids rule, like she's mentioning the weather or something. She goes, I've been thinking, and I really want the wedding to be elegant and adult only. Kids running around would ruin the vibe. I turned to look at her. I said, what about our daughters? Like, I honestly thought she was joking at first. We had 3 kids between us. How were we supposed to get married without them there? She goes, it's too stressful having any kids there, even ours. And she said it so matter-of-factly, like it was the most logical thing in the world. I hesitated. I really wanted Lucy at my wedding, but my fiancé seemed so set on it, and I figured once we're actually married, she and Lucy would have more time to bond. I gave in. When I told Lucy she couldn't come, she just stared at me for a minute. Then she asked why her soon-to-be stepsisters got to be in family photos, but she didn't get to see me get married. I had no good answer. She cried herself to sleep that night. The next few months were rough. My fiancé was stressed about wedding planning, which I get. But I noticed whenever I'd ask if she wanted to take Lucy out for ice cream or to the park, she'd say she was too busy. Meanwhile, she'd take her own daughter shopping every weekend. I brought it up twice. Both times, she apologized and promised to do better. She took Lucy to the movies once in those 3 months. Once. A week before the wedding, Lucy asked me if her stepmom even liked her. I told her, of course she does. She's just busy with wedding stuff. But honestly, I was starting to wonder too. I mean, I kept making excuses in my head. The wedding was expensive. Planning took time. Blending families was hard. But something felt off. Lucy would draw pictures at the kitchen table, and my fiancé would walk right past without even looking. When Lucy tried to show her a dance she'd learned, my fiancé would be on her phone scheduling vendor meetings. Looking back, I can see all the signs I ignored. Like when we went to that family restaurant and the waitress assumed my fiancé's daughters were my kids, and my fiancé didn't correct her. Or when we took family photos for the Christmas card and somehow Lucy ended up cut out of the final version my fiancé ordered. She said it was a printing error. I believed her because I wanted to believe her. There was this one Sunday morning when I was making pancakes with Lucy. Our thing, you know? My fiancé came downstairs and asked if we could skip it because she wanted to take her daughters to brunch at this fancy place downtown. I said, sure, we can all go together. She gave me this look and said, actually, it's kind of a girl's thing, just me and my daughters. Lucy heard the whole thing. She stopped mixing the batter and just stood there with the whisk in her hand. I told my fiancé that Lucy's a girl too, and she laughed it off like I was being ridiculous and said, you know what I mean? Quality time with my own kids. My own kids! Those words sat wrong with me, but I pushed it down. I figured she misspoke. People say things they don't mean when they're stressed. I made that excuse for her constantly. Wedding day arrives. I'm in my car heading to the venue with my best man, Jake. I'm nervous, but excited. I kept telling myself that after today, everything would settle down. Lucy would finally feel like part of the family. My fiancé would relax once the wedding stress was over. We'd be a real blended family. I had this whole vision in my head of us all sitting around the dinner table laughing, taking family vacations, doing normal family stuff. We pull up and I see the decorations. Everything looks beautiful. White roses everywhere, these fancy lanterns hanging from the trees, a violinist playing near the entrance. I remember thinking, okay, this is worth it. This is the start of our new life. Then I walk through the doors and immediately spot her younger daughter running past in a pink dress, and then her older daughter, also in a matching pink dress. Then I see 3 more kids I recognize as her nieces, all under 10, all wearing matching pink dresses, all laughing and running around with flower baskets. I just froze in the doorway. My brain was trying to process what I was seeing. These weren't just kids who showed up unexpectedly. They were dressed in matching outfits. They had assigned roles in the ceremony. Someone had measured them for dresses. Someone had planned this. Jake goes, "What's wrong, man?" And I couldn't even speak. My brain was trying to process what I was seeing, trying to find some explanation that made sense. Maybe it was a surprise. Maybe she changed her mind and was about to call me. But no, this was deliberate. This was planned for weeks, maybe months. I walked right back outside. I could hear people inside whispering, asking what happened. The venue had maybe 30 people there, mostly early arrivals. My parents were in there somewhere. Her family was in there. All these people who knew, who had to know, that those kids were going to be at this supposedly child-free wedding. Her sister Ashley came running out asking what's going on. She was in a bridesmaid dress, looking panicked. I said, "Why are there kids at this wedding?" She got all nervous and tried saying something about plans changing, about how it was complicated, about how I should just come inside and we'd talk about it later. But I just walked away from her. I tried calling my fiancé, but it went straight to voicemail. I'm standing in the parking lot in my tuxedo, absolutely fuming. My hands were shaking. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my messages with Lucy's mom from that morning. She'd sent me a photo of Lucy in her pajamas, asking if I was sure about all this. The caption said, "She's been crying again. Just want to make sure you know what you're doing." I stared at that photo for a while. Lucy's face was red and puffy. She was holding her stuffed elephant, the one she'd had since she was 3. Meanwhile, inside that venue, 5 other little girls were dressed up like princesses, about to participate in a wedding that my daughter was explicitly banned from. 10 minutes pass. Then her car pulls up. It's this white Lexus her parents rented for the day, decorated with flowers and ribbons. She steps out in her wedding dress, smiling, confused about why I'm outside. The photographer is following her, trying to get shots. She's laughing, doing this little twirl for the camera. She looks beautiful. She also looks completely unbothered. She walks over asking, "What's wrong, baby?" And I just stared at her for a second. She tilted her head, still smiling, like I was being weird for not immediately complimenting her dress. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Why are there kids at our no-kids wedding?" Her face went pale. The smile dropped. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The photographer awkwardly lowered his camera and took a few steps back. I kept going. "Why are your daughters here? Why are your nieces here? Every single child in your family is in there dressed up, and my daughter is at home with a babysitter crying because she can't watch her dad get married." She started with, "I can explain. This was last minute. We couldn't find anyone to watch them." But her voice was shaky. She was a terrible liar, honestly. I mean, you don't get 5 custom-fitted matching dresses at the last minute. You don't plan flower basket choreography overnight. I laughed right in her face. It just came out. This weird, bitter laugh that surprised even me. I asked her where she managed to get 5 matching dresses custom-fitted at the last minute. Still no answer. She just stood there in her white dress, makeup starting to run a little, looking at me like I was ruining everything. Her mom rushed over saying we were causing a scene, that people were watching, that we needed to take this inside. I told her I wasn't going anywhere until someone explained why my daughter, my only child, was the only kid not allowed at this wedding. My fiancé wiped her eyes and admitted, "Okay, fine. This wedding was just the beginning of a bigger plan." Her voice got really quiet. The photographer had completely walked away at this point. Jake was standing about 10 feet back, looking horrified. She said she'd noticed that when Lucy missed a few family dinners, I eventually stopped mentioning her as much during those meals. When Lucy spent weekends at her mom's, our house felt more peaceful. She'd been testing how much of Lucy's presence she could reduce before I noticed, and I hadn't noticed at all. I felt sick, actually sick. My stomach dropped and I thought I might throw up right there in the parking lot, because she was right. I hadn't noticed. I'd let it happen. She kept talking, her voice eerily matter-of-fact, like she was explaining a totally reasonable business strategy. She explained she was going to keep doing this after the wedding, gradually scheduling more activities when Lucy wasn't around until it became our new normal. Family dinners when Lucy was at her mom's, date nights that happened to fall on my custody weekends, vacations planned around Lucy's schedule with her mother, just slowly, carefully, making Lucy less and less part of our lives. Jake asked if she was serious, and she looked genuinely confused by the question, like she couldn't understand why this was wrong. She said, "I thought this is what you wanted. You stopped fighting me on it. You stopped bringing her up. You seemed happier when it was just us and my girls." I couldn't speak. My throat felt tight. She was still talking, justifying, explaining her logic. When her younger daughter ran outside, she was maybe 9, holding her flower basket, little pink ribbons in her hair. She tugged her mom's dress and asked, "Mommy, are you going to make us disappear too someday? Like you're doing to Lucy?" Everything stopped. My fiancé's face went white. Her mother gasped. Jake muttered, "Oh, Jesus Christ." The little girl looked up at her mom with these big eyes and said, "I heard you tell Auntie Ashley that kids are only good when they're convenient. Am I convenient, Mommy? What about Kaylee?" My fiancé tried to pick her up, tried to shush her, but the girl squirmed away. She looked at me and said, "I think Lucy's nice. I don't know why she can't be here." Then she ran back inside. I stood there for another minute, maybe 2. People were definitely watching now. I could see faces in the windows. My mom was standing in the doorway. The violinist had stopped playing. I pulled off the boutonniere pinned to my tuxedo jacket and handed it to my fiancé. I said, "I can't do this. I can't marry someone who is planning to erase my daughter from my life. And the worst part is, you were right. I let you do it. I let you push her out, and I didn't even notice until you made it obvious." She started crying then, really crying, mascara running down her face, bouquet shaking in her hands. She kept saying, "We can fix this. We can make it work. I'll do better." But her mom was pulling her toward the venue, saying we needed to make a decision because people were waiting. I told Jake to grab my stuff from the changing room. I called Lucy's mom and asked if I could come pick Lucy up. She asked what happened and I just said, "I made a mistake. A really big one. Can I come get our daughter?" I drove straight there. Still in my tuxedo, no reception, no explanation to my family. I just left. Lucy's mom answered the door and took one look at me and said, "The wedding's off?" I nodded. She let me in. Lucy was in her room drawing. When she saw me, she looked confused and asked why I was there in my fancy suit. I knelt down and told her I was sorry, that I should have never told her she couldn't come to the wedding, that I should have never made her feel like she wasn't part of my family, that I messed up really, really badly. She asked if I still married the mean lady. I said no. I said I picked her instead. Lucy hugged me and said good, because she didn't even like my drawings. Then she asked if we could go get pancakes because she was hungry. So that's what we did. Me in a tuxedo, Lucy in her pajamas, sitting in a Denny's at 2 in the afternoon eating pancakes like nothing insane had just happened. But everything had happened. My phone was blowing up. Calls from my family, from her family, from friends. I turned it off. I'd deal with it later. For now, I just wanted to sit with my daughter and remember why I became a dad in the first place. Over the next few days, I started seeing everything clearly, like when your eyes adjust to light after being in the dark too long. I sat in my car outside the venue for over an hour that day, just scrolling through my phone after I dropped Lucy back at her mom's that evening. I went through my calendar, my messages, my photo gallery. I found 3 months of canceled plans with Lucy. Every single Saturday that used to be our pancake morning had been replaced with wedding errands. Parent-teacher conferences I'd skipped because of cake tastings. I realized I had no recent photos with her. The last one was from 4 months ago at a park, and I barely remembered taking it. I scrolled through my texts with Lucy's mom, my ex-wife, and I saw message after message where I'd told her I was too busy to make Lucy's school play, too busy to attend her soccer game, too busy for her awards ceremony at school. I'd sent Lucy's mom money to buy the gifts I was supposed to pick out myself, for her birthday, for Christmas. I counted 14 times. 14 separate occasions where I chose wedding planning over my daughter. 14 times I picked flowers, venues, caterers, seating charts, over spending time with the little girl who used to be my entire world. The fiancé's words kept replaying in my head. I noticed when Lucy missed family dinners, you eventually stopped mentioning her. She was right. God, she was so right. I'd stopped bringing Lucy up, stopped including her in conversations, stopped making plans that involved her. I'd basically started pretending she only existed on my custody weekends, and even then, only when it was convenient. I stopped crying only when my phone died, just sat there in my car in that empty parking lot. No battery, no music, just silence, and the sound of my own breathing. The venue coordinator had come out twice to ask if I was okay. I wasn't. I really wasn't. The next morning, my ex-wife dropped Lucy off for my usual weekend. But instead of just doing the normal handoff, she asked to speak privately. We stood in my driveway while Lucy grabbed her backpack from the car. My ex-wife looked exhausted. She told me she'd been watching me disappear from Lucy's life since I got engaged, and she stayed quiet hoping I'd figure it out myself. Then she listed specific examples, like how I forgot our Saturday pancakes 3 weeks in a row, didn't call Lucy on Valentine's Day, even though we always did a daddy-daughter pizza dinner, skipped parent-teacher conferences when I'd never missed one before. She said Lucy cried herself to sleep the night of the wedding asking what she did wrong, and my ex-wife couldn't keep making excuses for me anymore. She wasn't yelling. That's what made it worse. She was just tired and disappointed. She said, "I thought you were different. I thought you'd never be the kind of dad who forgets his kid when a new relationship comes along. But here we are." I asked her why she didn't say something sooner. She laughed, this sad, bitter sound. "I did," she said. "I told you Lucy was struggling. I told you she was asking questions about why you couldn't make time for her. You said it was temporary, that things would settle down after the wedding. So I believed you." Lucy came running up then, and my ex-wife changed her tone completely, gave Lucy a kiss, told her to have fun with Daddy, and drove away. But as she pulled out, she rolled down her window and said, "Don't waste this second chance. She won't give you a third one." Over the next few days, my phone kept buzzing. The fiancé texted me repeatedly, long, rambling messages that got increasingly defensive. She started off with apologies. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I was just trying to make things easier for everyone." Then they shifted. By day 3, she was sending me these long paragraphs about how she wasn't trying to hurt anyone. She was helping me transition into a life I clearly wanted based on my own choices. She pointed out that I was the one who agreed to everything. I was the one who said yes to the no-kids wedding. I was the one who stopped prioritizing Lucy. I was the one who didn't fight back when she suggested Lucy skip family dinners. I was the one who seemed relieved when Lucy spent more weekends at her mom's house. She kept asking why she was the villain when I made every single decision myself. I couldn't answer because she was partially right. I mean, yeah, she manipulated the situation. She engineered it, but I went along with it. I chose it. Every single time I had a choice, and I chose wrong. One text said, "You're angry at me because I showed you who you really are, and you don't like it." That one sat with me for a while. I deleted it. Then I reread it from the notification preview. Then I blocked her number, but the words stayed in my head. I tried to return to normal with Lucy, planning our old Saturday pancake tradition. I woke up early, got all the ingredients out, even bought those chocolate chips she likes. When she came downstairs, I was standing there with a mixing bowl and a big smile like we hadn't missed months of Saturdays. Lucy barely spoke to me. She sat at the table and watched me cook, answering my questions with one-word responses. I asked if she wanted to help flip the pancakes like she used to. She said no thanks. I asked if she wanted chocolate chips or blueberries. She shrugged. When I put the plate in front of her, she just picked at it. Didn't eat much. I asked what was wrong, and she finally looked up at me and said, "The babysitter told me about the wedding, about how your fiancé's kids were there in fancy dresses, about how they had flowers and special jobs. She asked why those girls got to be there but not her." I tried to explain. I told her it wasn't about her, that it was complicated, that grown-ups make mistakes sometimes. She cut me off. She said, "That's what grown-ups always say when they don't want you anymore." She heard her friend Zoe's parents say the same thing before her dad moved away, and Zoe only saw him twice a year now. I asked her where she heard that. She said Zoe told her at school, said her dad got a new family and forgot about his old one. Lucy asked if that's what was happening to her. I didn't know what to say. I tried to tell her no, of course not. I would never forget about her, but the words felt hollow because I had forgotten about her. Maybe not completely, but enough that she noticed, enough that she felt it. Lucy pushed her pancakes away and asked if she could go watch TV. I said sure. She left the kitchen and I sat there alone with a stack of pancakes nobody wanted, trying not to cry into the chocolate chips. A few days later, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was my fiancé's older daughter, Kaylee. She was 11. I could hear my fiancé coaching her in the background, whispering what to say. Kaylee awkwardly said her mom wants me to know she's really sorry and wants to talk things through like adults. The whole thing was obviously scripted. Kaylee kept pausing like she was reading from something. I could hear papers shuffling. I asked to speak to my fiancé directly. There was some mumbling, and then she got on the phone. Immediately, she launched into how we can make this work if I was willing to be reasonable about custody arrangements. Not our relationship, not the wedding, custody arrangements. She suggested every other weekend with Lucy would give us more couple time and reduce stress. She said it casually, like she was proposing a schedule change at work. Said it would actually be better for Lucy too. More consistent, less back and forth. She even mentioned she'd researched it and found articles saying kids adjust better with one primary home. I asked if she was seriously suggesting I voluntarily reduce time with my daughter. She said, "Well, when you put it like that, it sounds bad. But think about it logically. Lucy has her mom full-time. She barely notices when you're not there. We could focus on our relationship, on my girls, on building something stable." I hung up, just pressed the red button and sat there staring at my phone. She called back 3 times. I didn't answer. Then she texted, You're being emotional instead of logical. We can make this work if you just think about it rationally. I blocked her on everything. Phone, social media, email. I blocked her mom, her sister, her friends. Anyone who might try to contact me on her behalf. I was done. Completely done. My best man Jake came over that night with beer. We sat on my couch and he admitted he tried to say something 2 months ago. He said my fiancé made a comment about how quiet the house was without Lucy around. And I'd laughed and agreed. Said, yeah, it was nice having adult time without a 7-year-old interrupting every conversation. Jake said he dropped it because I seemed happy with the arrangement. I asked why he didn't push harder. He said he figured I knew what I was doing, that it wasn't his place to question my parenting. Then he mentioned that 2 other friends separately confessed they noticed me talking about Lucy less, but figured I knew what I was doing. One of his friends, Mike, said his wife almost didn't come to the wedding because she felt uncomfortable watching me phase out my kid. But they didn't want to overstep. Everyone saw it. Everyone noticed. And nobody said anything because they assumed I wanted it this way. And maybe part of me did. Maybe that's what scared me the most. A week after the canceled wedding, I'm sitting at my apartment around 8 at night, and there's a knock on the door. I look through the peephole and it's my ex-fiancée. She's standing there with 2 coffees from that place I like, wearing jeans and a sweater, hair pulled back like she's just running errands, like she didn't try to systematically erase my daughter from my life. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. She handed me a coffee and sat down on the steps outside my apartment like we were just old friends catching up. Started talking about the weather, about how the venue refunded half the deposit, about mutual friends who'd been asking about us. Then she launched into her actual reason for being there. Said she'd been thinking, and she wanted to try again with clearer boundaries this time. She suggested I reduce my custody to alternating weekends, so we'd have more time to focus on our relationship and her daughters. Said Lucy had her mom full-time anyway, so she'd barely notice. She actually said that. She'd barely notice. Like my daughter wouldn't notice seeing me half as much. Like that was somehow a selling point. I told her no, absolutely not. Not happening. She got frustrated then, that mask slipping again. She said I was being emotional instead of logical, and couldn't I see this would actually be better for everyone, including Lucy, who wouldn't have to split her time anymore? I asked her to leave. She didn't move. She said, you know what your problem is? You're afraid to admit that you were happier when Lucy wasn't around as much. You're punishing me for saying out loud what you were already thinking. I closed the door in her face, locked it, heard her knock a few more times before finally leaving. I poured both coffees down the sink and sat in the dark for a while. A few days later, Lucy started having nightmares. She crawled into my bed at 2 a.m. saying she dreamed I forgot to pick her up from school. In the dream, she waited, and I never came. All the other kids went home and she was just sitting there alone until it got dark. I held her until she fell back asleep, and then I just lay there staring at the ceiling thinking about how close I came to making that dream a reality. How I'd already started forgetting her in small ways that would have added up to big ones. Lucy's mom called the next day. The school counselor wanted a meeting. We sat in those tiny chairs in the counseling office while this nice woman with kind eyes told us that Lucy had been withdrawing from friends and seemed anxious about whether she was too much trouble. The counselor asked if there had been any family changes. I had to admit, I got engaged to someone who didn't want Lucy around, and I went along with it. Had to say those words out loud in front of Lucy's mom, in front of this stranger, in that office that smelled like crayons and hand sanitizer. The counselor nodded, made some notes, and suggested we focus on rebuilding stability and trust. Lucy's mom didn't say anything until we got to the parking lot. Then she said, "You almost lost her. Not legally. Worse, you almost lost who she is. Kids don't come back from feeling unwanted by their own parent." That night, late, my phone buzzed with a voice memo from my ex-fiancée, almost 10 minutes long. I almost deleted it, but something made me listen. She sounded tired but rational, calm, like she was reading from notes. She explained she'd been researching blended families and found articles saying kids are resilient and adapt to whatever structure parents create. Said if I committed to a clean separation now while Lucy was young, in a few years she wouldn't even remember being sad about it. She genuinely believed she was being helpful. She cited studies about how children of divorce adjust better with consistent schedules in one primary home. She talked about attachment theory and developmental psychology like she'd written a thesis. The way she presented it sounded almost reasonable until I realized she was suggesting I voluntarily abandon my daughter. She ended the message with, "I know you're angry now, but think about it logically. You'll see I'm right. You always do." Then the message ended. I deleted it. Then I emptied my deleted messages folder so I couldn't go back and listen again. Because part of me was scared she was right. Part of me had already proven she was right by going along with everything for months. I needed to clear my head. Started packing up the last of my stuff from the apartment my ex-fiancé and I had been sharing. I'd moved most of my things out already, but there were still boxes in the closet, some books, random stuff. I was going through everything methodically when I found her laptop under some blankets in the closet. She'd left it behind. I shouldn't have opened it. I know that, but I did. And there on the desktop was a folder labeled Family Planning. I clicked it. Inside were documents tracking my progress over 8 months. Spreadsheets noting how many times I mentioned Lucy each week, with color-coded cells. Green for weeks where I mentioned her less than 3 times. Yellow for 3 to 5 times. Red for more than 5. There were calendar events I'd canceled with Lucy, all highlighted and categorized. Soccer games, school plays, doctor's appointments, birthday parties. Each one had a note about my reaction. Didn't seem disappointed. Made other plans immediately. Forgot until Lucy's mom reminded him. There was a written log of my responses when she suggested Lucy-free activities. Entries like, didn't notice Lucy wasn't in family photo today, and agreed to skip her soccer game without pushback. Each entry had a date, a description, and a rating from 1 to 5 about how easily I'd gone along with it. The most recent entry was from 3 days before the wedding. It said, final test successful. Told him no kids at wedding, including Lucy. Expected pushback. Got none. Subject is ready for phase 2. Phase 2! I sat there staring at the screen for I don't know how long. She'd been documenting my withdrawal from my daughter's life like a research project. Like I was a case study. Like Lucy was a variable to be eliminated. There were graphs. Actual graphs showing my engagement with Lucy declining over time. Charts comparing how often I mentioned her daughters versus mine. A timeline of events showing the correlation between wedding planning and my decreased contact with Lucy. I felt sick, violated, but also horrified at myself because the data was real. Those weren't manipulated numbers. That was my actual behavior tracked and quantified. I really had stopped mentioning her. I really had canceled that many plans. I really had failed that badly. I screenshotted everything, saved it to a USB drive, closed the laptop and left it there. I needed proof, not for legal reasons or revenge, just so I could never lie to myself about what happened. Never pretend I was just a victim of manipulation. The numbers didn't lie. The next day I was sitting at my kitchen table sorting through mail when I pulled out one of the printed photos that must have fallen out of that folder. It was from Thanksgiving. The whole family gathered around the table. My ex-fiancé's daughters, her sister's kids, her parents, me, and Lucy. Except Lucy's face was circled in red pen, and there was a note in the margin, in my ex-fiancé's handwriting. Didn't include her in next holiday, with a check mark next to it. I just stared at that photo, at the red circle around my daughter's smiling face, at the note reducing her to an item on a checklist. I heard footsteps and looked up. Lucy had come out of her room. She was holding her stuffed elephant, hair messy from sleep. She wandered over and saw the photo on the table. She picked it up and studied it. Her little finger traced the red circle around her face. She asked, "What does this mean, Daddy?" I didn't know what to say. I fumbled for an explanation, but what was I supposed to tell her? That my fiancé was playing a game to make me forget about her? That there were spreadsheets tracking how much I loved her? That I'd failed every test? Lucy looked up at me with those big eyes. She asked, "Was she playing a game to make you forget about me?" I couldn't speak. My throat felt tight. Lucy tilted her head. Did she win? Since you're not marrying that lady anymore? Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to like and subscribe to not miss the next story.